Taking a break from their tower offense series, Anomaly, 11-Bit Studios has crafted their new game called This War of Mine, a war-based survival game focusing on civilians in the middle of a war-torn country. This has caught my eye ever since its November 14th release. 11-Bit Studios was kind enough to send me a review copy not too long ago, and so it's time we delve right on into it and take a look. Here's my review of This War of Mine. This War of Mine takes place in a fictional geographic location known as Pagorin. A fitting name given that the developers themselves are based out of Warsaw, Poland. The story carries on after civil war has raged throughout the city of Pagorin for roughly 2 years. A group of survivors have found refuge in a broken down building in hopes of finding food, water, tools, and a warm place to sleep for the night. The survivors you start out with are different every new game, as are the stories that they tell. For instance, my first playthrough of This War of Mine gave me the tale of Pavel, Bruno, and Marco. The city is filled with snipers, phones don't work, people are homeless, and there's a huge shortage of food and medical supplies. Bruno and Marco are great friends ever since before the war. They decided to stick together when war broke out. They ran into Pavel, Pagorin's ex-star football player. They decided to team up, and now here they are. This is but the basis of the story the player will unfold depending on their actions. For me, after a few nights, a man named Boris came to our door. His neighborhood was shelled to pieces and he was asking for a place to stay. The group welcomed him inside with open arms. That same night, Marco attempted to rob a couple not far from the safe house as the group was hurting on food. All was working out well until he was caught by surprise. Cornered, he was stabbed and severely wounded, only allowed to escape by the mercy of the house owner. By the time Marco had made it back, the safe house was robbed of its remaining food. On day 12, Bruno was shot and killed desperately searching a warehouse for bandages to save Pavel, as he was badly wounded. At the end of day 18, the group was too depressed or injured to scavenge during the night. Pavel, left untreated, died to his wounds, and Boris abandoned the group, leaving the shelter. Marco, depressed, wounded, and now alone, decided to pay the gravesite of his friend Bruno a visit. The trip cost him his life after finally making amends. All but Boris died during the war. It's this heart-wrenching storytelling tailored to the way you play that grabbed me from the very beginning to the very end. And even though I didn't win, I still walked away with a story reflecting my actions. It was powerful, emotional, and thought-provoking throughout, begging to be played again for a new outcome with new survivors waiting to have their story be told. This War of Mine is gritty. The artistic choice of washing everything out with a charcoal black sketchy design adds to the depressing nature of war. It gives everything from people to walls, chairs, appliances, and other items a war-torn feel, similar to something you'd see in an old World War II video on the History Channel. The tone is set from the moment you see the camera pan past the spray-painted sign saying, "Fuck the war." The characters you see in the game give off a sort of disconnect with the player. The camera is fairly zoomed back to the point of where you can't see their faces. Only when you open their biography do you get a detailed look at them, like you're sorting through old war documentation. There's no voice acting other than grunting from being shot or crying when someone is near their dead friend. Speech is only portrayed via text bubbles above their heads, but they add so much to the emotional punch that the game can give. Watching someone try to convince their friend that everything is going to be okay is heartbreaking, especially when it's usually the player's decisions that brought the survivors into such a state in the first place. The entire game is backed by a beautiful score that fits perfectly with each day and night cycle. As you scavenge for goods, the score hits you hard as daytime approaches and you need to gather just a few more things before you can hightail it out of there. The options menu is a bit bare bones. It does support a lot of resolutions and a sketchy or soft penciled in art style. It's just there's no drop down menu for the resolutions, which can be a pain. During gameplay, the only slowdown I ever seemed to get was when my scavenger returned to base. The game would become very choppy for about 10 seconds and then shoot straight back up to 60 FPS. It's a bit jarring, but it was never game breaking, for the safe house doesn't contain any combat scenarios. In the end, this war of mine is still a beautiful artistic vision, met with a decent options menu and a solid frame rate. The game controls like a point-and-click adventure. You shuffle through your survivors with a tab key or by clicking on them. You can tell them to move or interact with their environment using the left mouse button, or sprint by using the right mouse button. Each of the 12 possible survivors have their own unique skills. Bruno, for instance, is a very good cook. He uses less materials when cooking food, distilling alcohol from moonshine, or growing herbs and vegetables. Pavel is a fast runner, perfect for getting out of the way in a pinch. Marco is a skilled scavenger, able to carry more goods back to base. Using these skills effectively can make for a very strong chance of survival. When you're in your safe house, you can build items such as beds for sleeping during the day or night and to avoid poor sleep. Stoves can be made to get more out of scavenged meat and vegetables. Later you can craft things like ovens to heat up your shelter during the winter, or moonshine distilleries for your trading and bartering, gardens to grow vegetables, radios to listen in to the outer world, animal traps to, of course, capture animals, and barricades to patch up the holes in your defenses. You can also craft tools, various weapons, and ammunition as protection for your survivors for when they head on out during the night. My only gripe during the daytime is that there's no fast forward button. Countless times you'll find yourself waiting forever for your rain collectors to finish and be refitted with a new filter. And I don't want to click the end day button in fear of missing someone knocking on my door. It's small, but it can be boring at times watching the clock tick by with nothing to do but watch your people sleep and play guitar. The meat of the game is when you send out one of your people to gather supplies. Whether you choose to loot abandoned shelters, rob innocents for their supplies, or rampage rebel militiamen is up to you. Each action carries out various risks and rewards, sometimes pulling you into dangerous combat situations. And combat, by the way, is very challenging. Your character produces noise when they run around or interact with their environment. This can attract enemies towards your location. You can hide inside certain areas and strike when your enemy is unaware. It's always a good idea to carry a knife, hatchet, or firearm with you if you plan on hurting someone. Aiming a weapon requires patience. A reticule will fill up over time on enemies in sight, giving you a higher % chance of hitting or fatally wounding them. It's sometimes best to shoot first with a less accurate shot to suppress the enemy rather than get shot yourself. I found making a loud noise near a hiding spot allowed me to effectively eliminate the opposition without so much as a scratch on my survivors. It's tricky, but well worth learning how to gain the upper hand on the enemy when you're at times hopelessly outnumbered. When you're not out killing people, you can choose to trade with local NPCs like Franco, a traveling barterer that rips you off with horrible deals. But he's always welcome when you're in need of something like parts or food. As days go by, you may find other survivors that may want to join you on your journey. Others may simply seek help boarding up their windows, request food or medical supplies, or even ask for aid in raiding nearby buildings. Fulfilling these acts will make your survivors feel content with themselves, which is a powerful trait when it comes to dealing with depression. For instance, if you choose to kill someone, your survivors will break down, and if the broken are not looked after, they may leave the shelter or kill themselves. It's a challenge with food always being in demand, and with many mouths to feed, it becomes all the more difficult choosing not to rob others. Although the mechanics of the game are quite simple, I couldn't help but feel engrossed every night I went scavenging. I even developed a routine. Pavel would go first. He'd kill off the local militia or rebel soldiers in the area, and then stash all the goods he found in one location. The next night, I would send Boris, who's strong but slow, and have him collect everything Pavel had stashed away. This was a very enjoyable means to use my survivor's traits well. Throughout my playthrough, I encountered a few minor bugs, like two people sitting in the same chair clipping through each other, or when I denied to help someone rob a hospital, my survivors became sad, thinking I chose to help them even when I said no. Twice. When the game first came out, there were major game-breaking bugs that allowed you to trade one moonshine or cigarette for an unlimited amount of supplies.
For one, you will give all this up for one fucking cigarette? Mateo, are you alright, man? I think it's gonna come, like, at the end of the game, we're gonna find out that Mateo is actually, like, he's a double agent or something.
As of today, with patch 1.1.3, many bugs have already been ironed out, especially the major ones mentioned previously. I've only experienced one crash in my 15 hours of play, making me have to repeat a day over again, but it was nothing too frustrating. It would have also been great to see a notepad mechanic. I found myself writing down exactly what I need the next day on a piece of paper next to me. A feature like that would have been perfect for a game like this when your carrying capacity is so limited. There were also a few grammatical errors throughout the game, but nothing so severe that I couldn't understand what was written. Regardless of the minor issues, I enjoyed my experience a great deal. In all, this war of mine holds its own with great storytelling that's tailored to the player's actions, and the sketchy charcoal black art style builds the atmosphere right from the get-go with a wonderful soundtrack to help build tension during the night and comfort during the day. The point-and-click controls with basic crafting elements and set goals left me enthralled throughout my playthrough of the game. There's a few hiccups there regarding frame rate and bugs. It also would have been nice to see some other features implemented to improve the gameplay, but overall, I enjoyed my time learning about my survivors, protecting them, and guiding them to either their demise or safety. I give this war of mine a 4 out of 5. Well, there you have it, guys. That is my review for this war of mine. Please let me know what you guys saw of the video and, of course, the game if you had the chance to play it in the comments below. I do my best to read all comments and respond to them when I can. So it definitely helps me out to get any sort of criticism back from you guys, because a critic needs to be critiqued. That's just how it has to be. And I will be reviewing some games very soon here. I got access to Tales of the Borderlands, Episode 1, and of course the rest of the episodes when those are released, so I'll be reviewing Episode 1, hopefully fairly soon, as well as I just got I Am Bread. I'm actually kind of excited to check that game out. Made by the guy that made Surgeon Simulator, I believe. Very cool game. It looks like a lot of fun and a lot of like silly nonsense going on there. I also have access to a bunch of early access games. I just got a bunch of review codes just to go and check those things out. So expect preview videos and first impression videos coming out fairly soon in the coming weeks. Of course, I can't do them all at once. I can't spam them because I think I would go insane trying to edit those videos. Anyway, if you don't see me anytime soon, feel free to check out my Dark Crusade playthrough because that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be updating that quite frequently. Anyway, this outro is taking longer than everything. Thank you guys for watching. You guys rock. And subscribe for more Let's Plays, reviews, and commentary. I'm Akabane101, and I'll see you next time.